Welcome to another episode of the ASQ podcast, where we focus on life, leadership, and culture. On today's episode, we're having a candid conversation with Christina Sims, a firefighter paramedic. We talk about her childhood experiences, overcoming the effects of a traumatic car accident, and finding her way to success and healing. Stay tuned.
So, first and foremost, Christina, thank you so much for coming.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, I mean, I know that it's been a little bit. Since we talked about coming here, and life kind of like gets in the way, and things happen. So, but thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
Good. So tell me, like, what do you want to accomplish by having this conversation, by sharing a lot about you?
I guess I just want to kind of get out my role in this life, my experiences, what I've been through, the role that I play in my position in every dynamic of this world, as far as family, career, just individual. I want to share my experiences, get it out there.
Okay.
Maybe somebody's been through some of the same things, can relate, can, see what I've been through and compare themselves to my story and where I've come from those experiences.
Okay. No, excellent. So let me start there, right? Let's start. I always ask the question jokingly, but it's a very important question. Like, where were you pitched, right? Tell us about that.
So when I was born, my grandfather was in the military. So my mom was kind of like a military brat. She kind of traveled everywhere. He ended up being stationed in Ohio for a while. So that was their stomping grounds for a little bit. I was born at the Wright Pat Air Force Base up in Fairborn, Ohio.
Oh.
So those are my like stomping grounds, if you will. But then, a couple years went by. We ended up moving down to Florida. We've been in Vero, Fort Pierce ever since.
Yeah.
So this is home.
Yeah. How old were you when you came over?
I was maybe 3.5, 4 years old.
3.5.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you remember anything about living in the Air Force, in the base or around it, in that area?
So I would go up to visit my father every summer, reluctantly.
Yeah.
Every summer and every other like Christmas break from school. So he would, he wasn't allowed on base, but he would take me by the base. We would do like they had like tours and stuff of the airplanes and a museum, which was pretty cool. We would go up there. And I had family living up there for up until probably 10 years ago. So I would go up there quite often.
So tell me about the family dynamics. Like I know you mentioned your grandfather was in the military. Tell me about your mom, your dad, and then that immediate family structure.
So my mom has been pretty much the staple in my life. She is my, my person. She raised me, I wouldn't say as a single mother, but as a single mother. She was married to my dad right after I was born. He was not the best father figure or boyfriend, husband, whatever you want to call it. That didn't work out. She ended up seeing somebody else, well, a couple other people, ended up seeing somebody else pretty seriously, had my little sister. Her name's Ashley.
And Hi, Ashley.
Yeah. Shout out to Ashley. And then that didn't work out as well. She ended up going on recently divorced or single parent dating site, and then met my stepfather, who was in my life for maybe 18 years, pretty much raised me, but he worked 70 hours a week, 80 hours a week.
Okay.
So really my mom worked 40, 50, 60 hours a week as well, and was in school to get her master's degree.
Okay.
So he had 2 children and my mom had 2 children at that point.
Okay.
So we kind of just all raised ourselves, all looked out for each other.
So you were like a blended family.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Melting pot.
Melting pot.
Yeah.
What do you mean by a melting pot?
We were all around the same age. So my little sister Ashley is 2 years younger than I am.
Okay.
And then he had a daughter, Michelle, who was the same age that I was, and then another daughter, Marissa.
Oh wow.
Who's the same age as Ashley. So we all just kind of looked out for each other.
Wow.
We were all fairly close in age. So
how was you mentioned that your mom and your dad's relationship didn't really last long.
No.
Tell me about that. Tell us about that. And how did it affect you?
So my mom was 17 when she got pregnant with me.
Okay.
So my grandparents on my father's side were kind of pressuring her, like, when are you going to give me a grandbaby? When are you going to give me a grandbaby? Like, which is not normal out of, like, you know, grown adults pressuring a baby at that point, you know, to have a child. She ended up getting pregnant. She knew that my father was not a decent guy, was kind of reluctant, but ended up going through with it anyways because she was pregnant at that point. My dad was like the kind of man that I want dinner on the table when I get home. I want, you know, everything prepped for me. I want you to pretty much work full time, but also take care of all the housewife duties. So he just was not a good guy. Yeah. He was verbally and emotionally and physically abusive, quite manipulative, and thinks that he does no wrong. But everybody else is just out to get him. Yeah. Very paranoid, just a very interesting guy. Very interesting guy.
How was you seeing this in the way that they both interacted with each other, primarily your dad interacting with your mother? Can you tell me about, as a child, what things went through your mind, what happened within you when you saw these things taking place?
So I was very young, I would say, while they were together, because their marriage lasted maybe 3 to 4 months. Okay. So it was only the first 6 months of my life that they were actually together. Then my mom was like, no, I have a baby I have to look out for now. Like, I'm getting out of this situation. So I didn't necessarily see their interaction together, but my father ended up joining the military as well and kind of wasn't there for the first couple years of my life. Then he came back, and there was a custody battle. There was all sorts of stuff that kind of went on well above my head because I'm just a baby.
You're just a baby, yeah.
Yeah. And but I saw his interaction with me, and I noted very quickly that he was just not a kind man, not a person that I want to be around.
So when you started realizing those interactions, can you give us like some examples of things that happened that made you think, oh, wait a minute?
So I was young. I was still learning to talk. This is like probably a core memory that I will never forget.
Oh, okay. But this is like a core memory.
Oh my goodness. And not a good one.
Not a very good one. Okay.
But I know we were hanging out with some of his friends at their house, and they were all messing around, whatever. He was like, repeat after me, fuck you. Like, excuse my language.
And how old were you?
I was maybe 3. So I would say, fuck you. And then he'd be like, come here, and just smack me in front of his friends. And I'm like, you just told me to say it, you know? So then I was like very like on edge every time I was around him. I'm like, what do I say? He told me to say it. Am I supposed to say it? So, and there was a lot of instances like that. And he was neither of my parents were well off as children or when I was a child. So, I mean, I did have to spend every summer with him, and then every other winter break, I would go up there and we would have like butter noodles for dinner, and that would be our only meal of the day. He would rent out a room at like a house, like a 4 or 5 bedroom house, and just rent out a room. And he would leave me there while he went to work at like 6 years old, 7 years old.
By yourself?
By myself. He would give me a deck of cards and say, have fun. And then that was it. I was home alone for hours and hours and hours on end. Wow. Yeah, take a nap, maybe watch some cartoons on whatever 4 channels he had. And that was my life when I was up there.
So how do you, what about eating? What about like anything, interactions like with his side of the family or anything like that?
So at the time, my grandma on my mother's side was still living up there. So my dad was kind of like, everybody on my mother's side knew what was going on, and they tried to maintain a relationship with him for me, essentially. And it was never pleasant. So he would be like, I don't want you seeing them while you're here. This is my time. But then he would still leave me. So
leave you alone.
My grandma every once in a while I didn't have a phone. I didn't have a way to contact anybody. But she, every once in a while, when I'd be on the phone with my mom would get some information from me. She'd give it to my grandma. My grandma might sneak over there every once in a while. Now,
this is your grandma on your mother's side?
Correct.
Okay.
And then my grandparents on my father's side, I don't know. They had their own drama. Okay. Same thing. My dad, was kind of raised in the same element that I was raised in, as far as his father was kind of abusive, kind of paranoid and manipulative, and same kind of concept. So they had their own issues.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw them when I would be up there, but it was never pleasant.
No.
Not many pleasant interactions.
So it was like the same reflection of what was happening with your dad.
Mm-hmm.
It was the same reflection that was happening with your grandparents on his side of the family.
Correct.
Okay. So when did you start realizing, I get one experience from my father's side and I get another experience from my mother's side? When did you start really realizing that you swayed it to one direction rather than the other?
I would say very early on. Again, I had to go up there on summers and every other winter. So I would be on the airplane by myself, flying up there. And I'm like, Mom, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. And she would, like, I would get on the plane, immediately start throwing up before we even took off. She's like, oh, you're just getting airsick. Don't worry about it. No, it was the nerves just coming over my body, like making me like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be up there. And then on the way home, I would be fine because I'm like, I'm going back to my mom.
So it felt like a relief.
Yes.
Okay.
So it was definitely just like an overwhelming nerve reaction to where I'm just nauseous and throwing up, getting like on my way to Ohio. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. So I would say very early on, I would tell my mom, I don't want to go up there. She's like, I don't have a choice, unfortunately, honey. Like, it's a custody battle.
Yeah.
If I don't, he'll take me to court again, and it's going to be even more issues where you might end up with him full time.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right. I stuck it out until I guess like there's some sort of bylaw or something in the custody agreement where once I'm capable of making my own decisions, I can kind of make my own decisions. So I think 14, I was like, Mom, I'm not going.
You're not going.
I don't want to go.
Yeah.
And you can't make me.
So you spent your early childhood getting into your high school, into your teen years, teen years, your early teen years, going and doing something that you really didn't want to do because it was mandated by law for you to do so.
Correct.
And then you made a decision then at that point, I no longer want to do this anymore.
Correct.
How did that impact the relationship with your father?
Oh, he was not happy.
He wasn't happy. Okay.
He was not happy whatsoever. And again, he would like call me up. At one point he did buy me a phone. Like one of those little razors back in the good old days.
The good old razors, yeah.
Yeah. He bought me a phone to keep in contact with him, but then he would text me and be like, just off ripping me a new one. Not, hey, like, how's your day going? Hey, what are you doing? You know, not many common or kind interactions. So he would call me just to be like, why the fuck aren't you coming to see me this morning or this summer? Like, just to rip me a new one. I'm like, he's like, I'm turning off your phone. All right, turn off my phone. You know, so he was definitely not happy. He did end up moving. I was maybe 16, 17, and he ended up moving to Florida.
Okay. For
a couple years, about an hour and a half, 2 hours west. And he would want me to come over there and see him. And at that point, I was driving. So I was like, you know what? Let me try. Let me be that person, the bigger person.
Yeah.
Try to maintain a relationship so I don't regret anything.
Yes.
I would go over there and it would be the same thing.
Okay.
And I'm like, I don't want to do this.
Was there ever like a final battle and conflict in which you said, I had enough of this with him, like on a one-on-one conversation in which you said, I had enough?
I think it's been a long time coming for especially the last couple of years. Like, he was just down in Florida maybe 2 months ago, and I'm in the process of remodeling my house. So I'm like, man, I know you're in town. Like, I'm not saying I don't want to see you. You can come over if you want, like, see the house. I'll send the invite, you know, I'll extend the offer. And he was like, all right. I'm like, maybe we can go to lunch while you're here. Check out the house. We can go to lunch. And he brought his dog with him, like this little, I think it's like a Maltese or something.
Okay.
So brought his dog with him. And he's like, yeah, but what am I going to, his dog's name is Booger. What am I going to do with Booger? I said, well, you can leave him at the house. He's like, oh, no, I don't do that. He's like, I'm not leaving my dog unless I have to go to work. I'm like, well, then we could find a place that accepts dogs. He's like, no. So I'm like, you know what? It's very, very apparent to me that the dog, it just, like, at this point, it just outweighs me.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Okay. So
I'm like, I think we should just cut ties.
Yeah.
So that was just a couple months ago.
And how did he take that?
Oh man, I got a paragraph. Oh, wow. I got a paragraph of how again, he's a very paranoid person. They fed you, they brainwashed you all these years, talking about my mom, my grandma, like my grandparents on my mother's side. They've brainwashed you to think I'm a terrible person, da 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 da. I'm like, no, because my mom was one person, she's like, you need to give him a chance. You need to give him a chance. Like, give him the benefit of the doubt. Be the bigger person. He's not all about, you know. She's trying to allow me to have a relationship with my father. And I knew. I was like, I can't.
You can't.
No.
Yeah. So, segueing, right? Because well, we're going to get back into this as to that, how that relationship affected you in your teenage and young adult years, right? So tell me about the opposite side of the family, your grandparents, your mother, right? That kind of like has a lot of more pleasant memories than your dad does. So tell me about that side of the family.
So again, my mom was a staple my whole life. I'll call her. I'm like, Mom, I'm having a bad day. I just need you right now. Just come over. At the
end of the day, we're just big kids, right?
Yeah,
and we need mama's love sometimes. I get it. I get it.
So, and then my grandparents, man, my grandma's probably a saint. She is probably the best human I've ever met in my life. She would, when we were still living in Ohio, my mom, again, not well off. We ended up moving in with my grandma. My mom still worked full time. My grandma worked full time. But I would spend days, and I was so excited to go to grandma's house when we moved out. I was like, I'm going to Mama. I call her Mama. I was like, I'm going to Mama's house. I'm like, yes. I would walk in. She would have sweet tea because I'm a big sweet. I don't drink soda, but I drink sweet tea.
Same here.
Oh man, she would have a gallon of sweet tea ready for me, just the way I liked it. You know, we would always just do fun things. I was like, those were my people. Yeah. You know, same thing with my grandfather. He lived in New York at the time, and then he moved down probably 17, 18 years ago to Florida. Right, shortly after we moved down. It wasn't too. I think it was 2006, and we moved down in 2000. Okay. So, yeah, he was. They were both huge
and they were together?
No, so they were not together, but another weird dynamic.
Yeah, this is an interesting dynamic. Yeah, an interesting dynamic.
So my grandmother remarried. They divorced shortly after right before I was born, actually, I believe. So they divorced. My grandma ended up remarrying. He passed away. He was a truck driver, so, I mean, he was around, but he would always be gone for extended periods of time. Okay. So he was on a trip and ended up having like a pulmonary embolism. Oh, wow. And died en route to a delivery. Okay. And so they both kind of just remained single. And then when they both moved to Florida, they ended up getting a house together. Oh, wow. Just because I have an aunt who's a little bit out there, a little bit disabled, maybe. Okay. Mentally. Okay. So they take care of her and my little cousin. So they've always just kind of had that family dynamic, even though they were never remarried. They slept in separate rooms, but they always were just very, like, they had that family dynamic. Yeah. So they were like friends. Yes. And they got along, even though they were separated at the time. 100%. Okay. Did they ever get back together? Like, no? They just kept in that direction. Correct. Oh, wow. That's a very an amazing dynamic. It is, because right? you don't see that a lot. No, not at all. You definitely have to be like the bigger person to overcome your past and everything that you went through, and be like, yeah, we can maintain a friendship at this point. Yeah. So at this time, you had your grandma, your grandfather was in New York, and then your mom. You said that she was working a lot. Tell me about that experience of seeing your mom sacrifice so much for you. At that moment, it was just you, right? No. So it was all four of the children. All four of the children. Correct. So tell us about that, and then tell me about your dynamic with your stepfather after your mom got married to him. Okay, so my mom, my mom tried to stay present. Like, she would still, on top of all the hours that she worked, all the hours she was putting into school, she would still go to the PTA meetings. She was still a volunteer at the school when we were in elementary school. She was still around, like, working her behind off to, give us the life that we deserve. So let me get this straight. She was working. She was going to school. She was... For her master's degree. Yeah, so that was not easy.
No, not easy at all. She was a house taking care of the family, but also being very attentive in your life.
Correct.
So she was doing all that.
She was a superwoman.
She was a superwoman.
So she was checking all the boxes, you know, doing everything that she could to make sure that we had a decent life. We had a present parent, and you know, all my other sisters had other family as well, like Michelle and Marissa from my stepfather.
Your stepfather, yeah.
Had their mom in the picture, and then my little sister Ashley still had her dad and grandparents in the picture.
Okay.
So they were all, you know, they all had, but at that point I was like, I'm staying here. This is home.
Yes.
I'm not going anywhere. While everybody else would kind of segue off.
Okay.
But
how did that make you feel, seeing that they went to like the different parents, and then you had to stay behind because of your relationship with your dad?
It's definitely been something that has truly impacted my life.
Okay.
It's obviously it's like almost gut wrenching to like see like, oh, and I'm happy for them that they have those, you know, two parents. Like during Christmas time, if it was my mom's Christmas, like, and everybody was there, everybody else would get like these big boxes, like huge, like delivery boxes of, you know,
from the other parents
of Christmas gifts or an Easter basket or stuff like that. And I'd be like, okay, I'm just going to sit here and watch. And my mom always tried to do a little bit extra for me because she knew my position, knew what the dynamic of the relationship was with my father and my grandparents on that side. So
how did that make you feel? I mean, let's kind of like dive into that, because that's kind of like a very shapes our perception, right? Abandonment, like, what did I do wrong? Were those thoughts going into your mind when you saw your other siblings, their extended family really care for them, but you didn't have that?
100%. You know, it's never like, and even as a child, I was maybe 8 years old, 9 years old, all the way up till maybe 18 when we were all kind of separating and going out of the house. It's definitely something that shapes you. You know, you're not able to get some of the same things that people that are very close to you are getting. So you almost feel like you're like left out, a little bit of FOMO, if you will.
Okay.
And then, 100%, I felt like a little bit abandoned by my father's side. Even though it was partially my choice, it was still like, why can't you be a better person for me?
Yeah.
You know, like I'm your blood. I'm your flesh and blood. Why can't you step up to the plate a little bit when everybody else's family has, you know? So it was definitely tough to watch. A lot of times I hated holidays. Most children love holidays. I'm like, I don't want to do this. Like, Santa's coming. Awesome. Nah.
Yeah.
Cool. So it was definitely hard. It was hard to grasp, especially when I'm not familiar with the mindset. Like, I don't have the adult mindset to where I can understand, like, hey, this is just how the cookie crumbled. You know, it's definitely something that shaped me and made me a little bit more independent, I would say, where I don't feel like I ever need anybody except for maybe my mom.
Yeah, except for
mom.
Yeah.
But I don't ever feel like I'm relying on anybody to get the job done or provide for me. You know, I've made it to where, and I believe I mentioned this in there as well, like, I got a job at a very young age. I was able to provide for myself. I was serving, and although it was maybe $300 a week, I bought my first car. I paid for insurance. I paid for gas. Like, I developed that independent mentality to where it's like, I can do this. I'm on my own. I came in this world alone. I can go out alone. Yeah.
And you know, it's an interesting thing. I love the reflective aspect of what you just said, right? Because a lot of the times, particularly when we're young and we don't understand why things happen, like the way the cookie crumbles, right? We always look internally and blame ourselves for things, right? This is our fault. Yep. And the fact that you were able to be to arrive at the aspect of being more independent, right? Kind of like shows a segue from being a child to becoming a young adult.
Correct.
Right. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the time after experiencing all these things, right? Both a great family, but also all the adverse relationships that with your father's side, and then seeing the loneliness and the abandonment that you felt. Let's talk about that transition into independence, right? Tell me about that. Tell me about like your high school years when really you started shaping the way that you are and the way that you think and how your life is going to go from that point on?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm an openly gay woman. I'm a lesbian. You can look at that or you can see that by looking at me.
Okay, how did that develop? How did that unfold? Tell me about that first.
I've kind of always known. I was never like, a lot of people have their first relationship, maybe like middle school, early high school, even late high school. I was like, I'm not really into it. Like, these guys are weird. You know,
they're dirty.
They're nasty. They have cooties. So I was like, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm not interested. I'd rather focus on myself at this point.
Okay.
So I did that. I will say I had my first kiss in 5th grade.
Okay.
And it was actually a female.
Okay.
So I knew off rip.
Right off the bat.
And then I did have my first relationship in 8th grade, and it was another female. I was terrified to tell my mom. I was like, man, she's gonna freak out.
She's gonna flip her lid.
She's gonna lose it. So I come home from school one day. I'm like, Mom, I gotta talk to you about something. She sits me down. She's like, if you're about to tell me you're gay, I've known since you were 2 years old. She's like, I've known. You don't have to tell me.
You know, you're the second person that I've interviewed that is like, and that had the fear of telling like their families and all that stuff. And then when they say it, the family is like, we knew. And so it's kind of interesting that you said that too. So go ahead, keep going. I'm sorry.
No. I think it's actually a lot more common than what it's made out to be. Mm-hmm. You know, my family was always like, I'm going to love you regardless. Do I necessarily agree with what you're doing? No, but you're my daughter, you're my granddaughter, you're my stepdaughter, you're my sister. I love you. I was raised with you. This has not changed how I feel about you. It's not something I would choose, but it's your reality.
But you did get an acceptance from them.
I did.
Yeah.
And
what about your dad?
It took me a lot longer to tell him.
Oh.
And he, again, probably had the same reaction that anyone can guess. You know, he was not happy about it. Called me all sorts of names, which was typical. So I just kind of let it go. And then we didn't speak for a couple years. And then he came around and acted like nothing happened. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to sweep it under the rug too. Try to be the bigger person. Let's not revisit that situation. And then the next time I went to see him, I think he was here. He tried to set me up on a blind date with a guy. And I was like, you've lost your mind. You've lost your mind. So, but anyways.
So after coming out, after the 8th grade, you talked to your mom, your family now. How did that keep unfolding?
I think that's kind of another thing that shaped my independence, to where it's like, I can be different. I can be who I am. I can live the life that I want to live and do it all by myself. You know, like, I don't need especially with my father, like in his reaction. And there was a couple other people that had like a little bit of an iffy reaction, but
like
they ended up. So my grandfather, he's a very religious man.
Okay.
He was like, I still love you, but are you sure? Like, are you sure? Do you want to do that? And he's like, I don't agree. Like, I think in the Bible, it doesn't say, you know, that 2 women or 2 men should be together. It's just not something that should happen. But I love you regardless. And then my stepfather, he didn't really have a problem with me coming out. It was when I cut my hair. And he was like, oh, reality's setting in. He's like, it's not a phase. What's happening?
Yeah.
So he was a little caught off guard too, but I think overall, even those 2 people were very receptive to who I was as a person and who I was becoming as a person. So they accepted what the outcome was.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so then keep going. You're free. You are accepted. What happens? What continues to happen and unfolding in your life at this moment?
I think, again, it allowed me to be the person that I want to be. You know, I don't have to. Because, of course, there were kids at school that were like, no, that's not cool. And then there were someone that was like, that's cool. I want to be like that.
Yeah.
But I was kind of the first person in my class to come out. So I guess I kind of got to be that.
Now, this happened in high school or it happened in you said 8th grade. Is it the first kiss happened?
Yeah.
And then it was a transitioning into high school, or was it still like in the middle school?
So I would say it was still kind of under wraps in middle school. But then my freshman year, like my close friends knew and whatever. but then I cut my hair right before freshman year, or right before sophomore year, actually. And that's when everybody was like, oh goodness, like this is real. So then I had like, I would notice like other people would start following that trend, and you know, it became more common to see. And this was still in the time, because that was almost 10 years ago, or it was, I guess, 10 years. Wow, I'm old.
No, you're not old. It's like, let's not talk about, you know, your hands falling apart. Never mind. We'll get it.
So it was 10 years ago, and that it wasn't necessarily the most common thing. Like this LGBTQ thing was not widespread. It was always like no gay marriage. Like the rights weren't always there. And
Vero is a very conservative place as well.
It is. It is.
So how was that, kind of like being in that environment of a very conservative culture, an area here in northern South Florida?
Yeah.
Right. And then having those dynamics, how did that play in your life?
So I would go, again, I was young. I was in freshman, sophomore year. And I would go to the grocery store with my mom, and the cashier would be calling me, how are you doing today, buddy? You know? And it was just something I've always kind of gotten. Even still, I'll have patients that I'm taking to the hospital. They'll continuously call me sir. And even if I correct them, they're still just like, no, I'm going to go this route. I'm going to call you sir the whole way, and I'm going to stick with it. So
is that do you feel that that's like being antagonistic, or is it they don't know? What do you think? Why do you think you elicit that response come to you?
I think it depends. I don't think it necessarily shows the type of person that I am. I think it shows more of the type of person that they are.
Okay.
You know, so I think some people may do it to be antagonistic, and maybe, you know, some of the people that we see are just not very nice people.
Yeah.
You know, but other people, they're just like, oh, I'm sorry, you know.
Okay.
Let me treat you with some respect.
Yeah.
A lot of the county, even all of South Florida mostly, until you get to like Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Boca area, is very conservative in this area. So, I mean, I've always kind of gotten that, and I'm at the point where it doesn't even bother me. I've just, you know, it doesn't reflect on me.
Yeah.
It reflects on you.
Yeah. So now that you're progressing, you're 10th, you're very clear about who you are. You're clear about your independence. You've now beginning in the young adult phase, getting into your junior, your senior year in high school, and you're about to become really fully somewhat independent. Let's talk about that part and what was going through your mind in terms of who you are as a person, but also the path that you're going to choose to follow in the next few years of your life.
So, sophomore, junior, and senior year of high school was definitely like a principal element. I was busy all the time, you know, as most high schoolers are.
Yeah.
I worked 20 to 25 hours a week.
While going to high school, what jobs do you have?
I was a server in a retirement home for for probably like 2 years.
Okay.
During high school, which was a minimum wage job, but it taught me responsibility. It taught me lack of sleep. It taught me all sorts of things. It taught me how to be personable with all walks of life, all generations, you know? So it was nice I mean, a lot of people are like, I don't want to have a job. I'm in high school. I want to enjoy the time.
I want to enjoy my time.
Yeah. But I had no problem doing it because it did lead me up to such a broad spectrum of capabilities to where I'm able to talk to multiple people. I would say that I have an easier time than most people talking to people. So it definitely taught me a lot. And then I also was in AP classes all throughout high school, busting my behind to get good grades. Because if I brought home a B I can bring home an A on my progress report or report card. And if I had a missing assignment, my mom would be taking away my phone or whooping my behind because she thinks it's lazy.
Yeah.
Which I can respect at this point. During the time, I was like, I hate you.
I hate you.
I hate you.
Don't we all?
I was like, I hate you. But now I'm like, wow, that really taught me something. Like, don't be lazy. Like, get your job done. Yeah. Do what you need to do. And be what you can be. Be the best you can be.
And it's interesting because, you know, I always look at, you know, the pre-questionnaire that I send out to everybody, you know, and it's very interesting because you earned 3 varsity letters. Yep. You maintain a 4.3 GPA while also working during this time. And then you worked at the retirement home, you know, and then you still had your sisters and you still had all that. So tell me, what were the lessons that you've learned at this early age because you were busy.
Oh yeah.
You know, there's not a lot of idle time during this time, and then you also are high performing in school. So tell me about like what drove you during that time besides the fear of getting whooped.
Oh yeah, my mom, honestly.
Your mother.
Oh yeah, she was on me, on all of us, really. But I would say, yeah, just maybe that stride of independence. Like, I want to be the best person that I could be. My mom always raised me to be the best person that I could be. So I was busting my ass. There was days when I would wake up for school at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, get out of school at 2 o'clock roughly in high school. And then I'd be in practice from 2:30 to 4, and then at work from 4:30 to 9 o'clock at night.
What practice?
So I did basketball, I did flag football, and I ran track.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so those are the 3 varsity letters that I obtained. So it was
how was your basketball? How was your athletic career? Tell me about your athletic career.
So my senior year of high school, we actually got we won the state championship.
Basketball.
The 8A, correct.
Oh,
8A women's basketball championship. We went out to Lakeland. We were district champions, I think 2 out of the 3 other years. And we had a pretty badass team, Omar.
Yeah. No, I mean, Vero's well known for their athletics.
Oh, yeah.
And stuff. Yeah. Which position did you play?
I played either small forward or shooting guard.
Okay.
Depending on who else was in the game.
Oh, so you got handles in.
Yeah. One-on-one?
No. Not anymore. You guys were this trend. I was talking to Hodge about this, and I'm like, no, I can't hang with you guys.
Yeah.
That's great, though. So you were in athletics, academics, work. So very independent. Tell me about, because you mentioned it earlier, and I want to hear about this. You got your first car. You paid for your insurance. Was it around this time as well?
So yeah, I got my permit at like 15, like most people. Got my license at 16. I think maybe 16 and a half, 17. I got my first car. I ended up actually totaling it. Was it a week after my 18th birthday.
Was it a Mustang?
No, it was a Ford Explorer.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know why I chose that as my first car, because it was like $70 to fill up the gas tank, and I'm like, I got maybe $5 in my name right now.
But they were nice, though.
They were nice.
They were very nice.
Yeah.
So what happened that you totaled it?
I was actually, funny story. I was sitting still. It was like a 1-lane road. So both traffic was going both directions. So the 2 cars in front of me was waiting to turn left because there was oncoming traffic. So they were waiting. I ended up getting rear-ended from behind, and then I got sandwiched in between 2 cars.
Oh, wow.
So I was completely still, and they hit me going probably like 50 miles an hour.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. They ended up flying me out to Lawnwood. It was a pretty intense.
Any like physical, what happened to you physically? What kind of injuries or anything like that?
A lot of like cerebral spinal injuries. So I have back injuries, neck injuries. I don't know if you've ever noticed, or I guess you didn't know me before, but I developed a little bit of like a stutter too from the accident, which they can't really pinpoint where it came from, but
So now and this is while you were in high school.
Correct.
So how did that affect your schooling? How did that affect your work? How did that affect everything? Because you're doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So because that's a very big trauma. I mean, we'll get into your profession in a minute, but that's a very traumatic thing.
It was.
And so tell me about that.
So, like I said, it was a week after my 18th birthday.
Okay.
So I did kind of miss out, I would say, on a lot of my senior year.
Okay.
I still tried to play basketball, but I was in the middle of a lawsuit at the time as well.
Oh, okay.
So, and I was all alone in my lawsuit because I'm an adult now. I'm considered a legal adult.
Yeah.
So I can like refer to my mom. I'm like, Mom, what do I do? But I'm like, ultimately this decision lies on me. So I ended up doing dual enrollment for most of my senior. I ended up dropping most of my classes. I had to be at the high school for 1 period a day.
Okay.
And I did dual enrollment. So I would go to school, and most of it was virtual. So I could kind of work from home because I was having all these injuries. I was in physical therapy for 14, 16 weeks after the accident. So at one point they thought I was never going to walk again.
Oh, my God.
So really? It was definitely a pretty scary experience. Definitely something that, again, shaped who I am. And honestly, that's why I chose the profession that I chose, because they responded and they gave me the care that I needed. And I even looked back. We have like logbooks at the station.
Uh-huh.
So I looked back and saw who was on the call. I like went
Oh,
up to
really?
them. I brought them stuff, you know, all sorts of stuff. And they didn't know that it was me.
They didn't know at all.
Because it was years later
Uh-huh.
at this point. And they were like, oh my goodness. For real that happened? Like that was you? I'm like, yeah. So it's definitely, I would say, put a huge emphasis on why I chose, because I ended up going to school for a couple years. I went to USF over in Tampa.
Okay.
For business and pre-med. I changed my major like 8 times, like most
like most
college
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I ended up getting an associate's over there, but I'm like, I don't know what I want to do with my life still.
Okay.
So I came home, and then I kind of took a year off, and I was like, I got to figure out what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Went back to serving. I was serving full time, trying to come up with some money, and ended up, I was like, man, maybe I should be a firefighter. I'm kind of at 90% capability at this time.
Okay.
Like let me get back in the gym. Like, let me start working harder. Let me focus on my health and my fitness, and maybe actually do like this firefighter thing.
Yeah.
So I ended up going that route, getting in the academy, doing that. And
Let me ask you about this stage, right? Because again, a lot of people go through a stage of uncertainty, right? And what catalyzes that is like you go to school, you're thinking that you want to do this particular thing. Tell me about that stage of uncertainty, and then the coming out of that uncertainty and saying, that's what I want to do. Tell me about that, because that darkness, right? It could be very debilitating, considering the
100%.
fact that, number one, you're being high achieving in your high school career, in your life, you're being productive, you're being disciplined. This happened that is completely outside of your control, right? Throws some of your plans off. You still were able to overcome that, but they're not sure what you're going to do. Tell me about that.
so I will say that accident caused me to go in like a deep, dark depression.
Okay, tell me. Yes, let's go there.
It was scary. It was a
Uh-huh.
scary moment. My mom, again, just provided my backbone for a while. Even as a grown adult, I was like, I can't do this without you. I need you. So I ended up, I didn't have a car. I didn't have much means of mobility. My mom kind of took a little bit of time off. She was a teacher at the time, and it was coming up on like Thanksgiving break and Christmas break and stuff like that. So she ended up taking some time off to help take care of me, which was super helpful. I was very thankful, all that stuff. I ended up losing my scholarships because I had scholarships to go to USF for sports like athletics, and I lost it, obviously, which was another very hard thing for me to cope with. And I was like, man, that was my dream. That was my goal. That's what I've been working my ass off for. And it kind of all just got stripped from me from this accident. So I was like, you know what? I'm still going to go. I ended up, cause it was my senior year, I could still apply. So I ended up applying to one school cause I was in the hospital during all the applications, like when the applications due, it's normally due in like November, sometimes December, October, like right around that area, right, like the fall of your senior year. So I ended up applying to one college because I was like, I'm in the hospital. I don't want to be dealing with application after application. So I'm going to apply to one school that I'm confident I can get into and roll with it. So I applied to USF, ended up going to USF. I almost did their walk-on team, but man, I experienced a little bit of that independence when I was like, I'm on my own. I got my own place.
Yes, yeah.
I got a little bit of money in my pocket from this lawsuit. I'm going to party.
Yeah.
I'm going to party. I'm not going to worry about going to practice. So ended up partying. I originally signed up as a pre-med major. Then I'm like going through school. I'm obviously building relationship after relationship, gaining a bunch of friends, kind of going through all the motions of college, like the college experience.
Romances and all that.
Yeah.
Playing.
Yeah, you know. The stoplight parties, I was always wearing green.
Why?
So a stoplight, it's like stoplight party.
I wasn't I was boring growing up, but tell me, stoplight, I'm green. Go ahead.
Red means like stop, like don't flirt with me, don't go. Yellow means I might be talking to somebody, but I'm still open. You know, green is like I'm single. Let's go. Always wore green.
Okay.
But
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Learn something new every day.
Yeah, there you go.
I was boring, you know. Reading and stuff. Okay.
Honestly, as I get older, I feel like the boring side of life is much more appealing.
No, but you also need to experience that,
100%.
you know, to see it, you know. I get that. But I said, so go ahead.
Yeah.
So green, go.
So, ended up doing the pre-med thing and then talking to people. Everybody's like, I'm doing mass comm, I'm doing business, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'm like, well, what do you plan on doing with that? I'm picking people's brains, you know, going through the motions where it's like, what do you want to do? What do I? And I'm still like, I did pre-med because the medical side of things have always interested me.
Okay.
I'm like, man, I don't want to be in school for 10, 12 years. Let me maybe switch it up. So I went business, like business administration. So I ended up getting my degree in that. There was a couple other things like in between. I did mass comm for I think 2 weeks.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, no.
But
a lot of the class, like the undergrad classes I was taking, would go over to the business degree. So I ended up switching to business, stuck with that, did my 2 years over there, got my degree. And I was like, man, I could go for my bachelor's here, but I don't even know what I want to do. What am I going to do with a business degree? I know it's a whole umbrella. You can do a lot with it, but I'm like, I don't know what, like where life is taking me at this time. So I'm like, let me just go home. Let me save some money. Let me go home. Ended up moving back with my mom, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to work full time, pay some bills, trying to figure out like life or whatever. Ended up getting into some stupid, plus in college, I was like partying nonstop. Yeah. I'm like, man, I'm kind of tired of this life. Like, I wake up feeling like shit. I'm missing my 8 a.m. classes. I'm like, something's got to change. Something's got to change. Yeah. Came home. I started taking like a couple other undergrad classes at the state college, and I was like, I'm just still trying to figure out what I'm doing. Finally, I'm like, actually, Brandon Parkinson. You know Brandon.
Yeah.
We've been friends.
I haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah. We've been friends for years and years. We ended up going to lunch one day, and he was like, I'm doing this fire academy thing. Why don't you try to get in? Like, I could definitely see you doing it. So I was like, you know what? I'll think about it.
Yeah.
I'm going home. A couple weeks go by. I'm like, man, I hate the serving industry. I have a love-hate relationship with it. It's great money. You see a lot of cool people, meet a lot of cool people, but it's not something I can sustain long term. So I'm like, let me do it. So I signed up for all the classes, did the track program, ended up doing it, and haven't looked back since. Yeah, I mean, I love my job. Yeah. I do a couple things on the side, but definitely a stable career, probably the best job in the world.
Yeah, but definitely. It's for 2 days out of the week, but let me not get into that.
Relax,
let me not get into that. You know, I have a son that rubs it in all the time too. Yeah. You know, so tell me, because this is interesting. You said the word depression earlier. How do you deal when you were in that state? Was there something that you seeked out help from, or was it primarily the support of your family that got you through that point?
So, I don't tell a lot of people this, Omar.
But this is why.
No.
This is why I do this.
I know. So I was seeking out like help from my family. My mom suggested I get into therapy. I ended up getting into therapy. She suggests I see a psychologist or what's the other one called?
A psychiatrist.
Psychiatrist.
Well, a psychiatrist. Yeah.
So she wanted
therapist, psychiatrist.
Yeah, she wanted me to get on some medication. Ended up getting on some medication. Didn't work. Tried a couple different things. And this wasn't like a 1-2 month depression. This is like, it lasted for 2 years, you know, like 2-3 years, where I'm just like, why did that have to happen to me? I'm like thinking I became like this optimistic, or I was this optimistic person, to where now like my whole view of life changed. Like, I didn't deserve that. What made that happen to me? Why me? Why me? Now I can barely move. Now I'm in pain every day. So I'm like, man, what did I do to deserve this? And I reached out to family. You know, I reached out to my friends. I was doing stupid things. No,
and it's, again, this is it's fine, but go ahead. What kind of stupid things were you doing?
I maybe dabbled in a couple things that I shouldn't have. Okay. And, you know, I was smoking weed all the time, like just drinking all the time, trying to numb the pain. I was like, man, this is not it. This is not the kind of life that I want to live. But I did end up going into a facility for roughly like a week, because I was just like, man, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, how did I set myself up so right to have this successful life, work my butt off, and then this is what it's come to. So it was dark for a while, and it was scary.
Let me ask you this, right? Because a lot of people, and I thank you for sharing that first and foremost, right? Because that's one of the things that I try to share with people when we have these conversations. It's that right there, that there's a point in our lives, right, in which we look at how absurd life is and the futility of it. It's like, what is this about, right? And there is a very clear darkness that comes there, because it
And
does.
it's overwhelming.
It's a very overwhelming.
100%.
And I know that although life comes out beautiful, those moments are important for us to understand. And this is the reason why I appreciate what you said in terms of that and how you articulated it. Because this is the part that I'm seeing in our world, in which, for instance, the suicide rates are very high. The mental health issues are very high, because a lot of us don't really, when we see that darkness, we don't know what to do. And we feel that the last
debilitating sometimes.
It's debilitating, and the last only way to come out of it is, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, I will say, I feel like that was almost like the easy way out, you know? And I'm not saying that's a whole different topic where it's like, I understand people go through some things.
Yeah.
People absolutely have a hard time. Everybody goes through like different highs and lows in life. But you got to fight. You got to be that person that's like, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to overcome this. I'm going to be the person that I've always wanted to be. Yeah. I'm going to make something of myself, regardless of if you just get like a job, even if it goes in all shapes and sizes, you know. And
the beauty of it all, right? Because I mean, I've experienced the same thing, and I know that a lot of people experience the same thing that I've spoken with, right? And that's the thing, that is like, it's not only an individual unique experience, it's a collective experience that at one point or another we face it in one way, shape, or form.
And it's honestly not talked about enough.
No, it's not.
It's almost shunned.
Yes.
And I don't think that that's appropriate.
No.
As far as society goes.
No, it's not. I mean, I think that it takes away from us.
It does.
From what we do. So tell me, once you were there, you were in the facility, you were going through all these issues, you were experimenting with things to try to numb the pain and not having to see that darkness. When was the aha moment that took you out of that?
I was like in the facility. It was just a local facility. I didn't go out anywhere. It wasn't like, it was, I think for the most part, covered under my health insurance. I went to the hospital and I was like, this is what's going on. Like, I need help. Yep. So,
which takes a lot of courage, by the way.
It was not easy.
Yes.
And it was definitely maybe pushed a little bit by my mother, but I appreciate her so much for doing so, because it could have ended a hell of a lot differently. Yeah. So I ended up going in there, and they take away your phone, and I almost felt like I was in jail. They're like, remove the strings from your sweatpants. I packed like a little bag, you know, whatever. Remove the strings from your sweatpants. Remove the shoelaces from your shoes. Like, I almost felt like, am I even like a human anymore? I felt like I was in jail. I was like, man, and I'm in there, and you know, you make a lot of like relationships that you wouldn't make on the outside of the world, like on the outside of those doors. Inside, you make relationships that you're like, what? Yeah. Like, I'm talking to this person right now, you know? Like, it's just not like a lot of different people from a lot of different walks of life with a lot of different issues. So you see, and you're like, man, yeah, I might not have it the best, but I could have it worse, you know? So, and you're without a phone in there, so I had no real contact with the outside world. There's like one little phone on the wall that you can call your parents, I think, or call somebody once a day. So, I mean, I took advantage of that. And then I think there was 1 or 2 days a week that they can come and visit you. Okay. So I had like, but it was only one visitor at a time, 1 or 2 visitors at a time. Okay. So I ended up having a lot of support come in that day, and they would like rotate in and out, which was probably what I was like, I need to get out of here. Like, I need to show up. I need to show up for myself, for my family, for my friends that just came and, you know, saw me, and I need to be who I was meant to be. I need to get out of this, you know? So I got out after a week and kind of, I guess, just saw life from a different perspective.
And once you did that, once you saw that different perspective, what action steps were what were the next action steps that you took?
I think that's when I kind of got serious, when it was like, I need to find something else to do in my life, because I can't be a server. I can't keep smoking weed every day, all day, every day. I can't, you know, it's not the life that I'm meant to live. And I knew that deep down. I was like, man, this is not me. Yeah. So I knew, and I think it's just the extra push that I needed to get to where I am now. Okay. So now your friend tells you about the fire academy, and you're like, well, you know, you were physically much better at this point. Correct.
Right. So then what happens next? What do you signed up? You tell me about that experience.
Correct. And that's honestly not the easiest thing to do. You have to go get like a background check, fingerprints. You have to get like a drug test, a full physical, all sorts of things. You have to pass a PAT.
Psych eval.
Yeah. So you have to go like the whole 9 yards. And I'm like, man, I'm not going to lie. There was a point where it's like, do I want to do this? But I ended up following through. I was like, yeah, let me get it done. If anything, if I don't go through with it, it's something else under my belt that I have. Mm-hmm. Ended up doing the track program, did EMT, did fire. I loved fire, man. I hated EMS or like the EMT school. I was like, I feel like a moron right now. Like I don't understand any of this. Then we get to the fire academy and I'm like, oh, game on. Like now I get to play. So, and it was hard work, don't get me wrong, but it's fun. And I built relationships that, again, like I have guys that I work with now that we have like a stronger relationship because we went to the academy together.
Correct. Yeah.
And it's a brotherhood. It's a sisterhood. It's just a family.
Family.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. And so tough, hard. Now after you finish the academy, right? I know that it takes a little bit. Sometimes you try different, you apply, it takes a little bit of time, and sometimes doubt creeps in, right? Oh my God, am I going to get hired? Tell me about that process of segueing from completing the academy to moving into now work.
So I think from the time you graduate the academy, you have a year to get hired, or like maybe 2 years to get hired to where your certs are still valid. Or if not, you have to go back through, or you have to maintain like CEUs and stuff, which I went through the academy in January of 2020, which was like COVID. Correct. Yes. So we got kind of segued in, like right after our midterm, we were like, all right, we're out of school. Okay. What's next? Yeah. You know? So we got put off for a couple weeks, or actually I think even 2 months we got put off. And then I still hadn't completed my national because they were shutting down testing centers. So I hadn't done my national for EMT. And at that point, I'm so fire focused. I don't know anything. If I thought I didn't know anything in school, I definitely don't know anything now. Yeah. So it took me a couple tries to pass my national for EMT, and I finally got it. I was putting it off, and I'm like, man, I haven't been studying. I've been working, just trying to pay the bills, yada yada yada. I ended up like taking it serious. I'm like, man, I need to get this done. I need to get it under my belt. Like, let me go get my national. Ended up going to get my national. Finally passed. I think it was after like the 4th try. I had to do the refresher course, and that helped a lot. Yep. So got it done, ended up applying, and the first time I applied, I got hired, actually with E95 County. Okay. Which was the county I was really hoping for. I did apply to Osceola, and they offered me a position as well, but they were not willing to work with medic school. Oh, okay. But you had to become a medic. Yeah. So, or maybe you didn't have, it was suggested that you become a medic. And obviously it's pay raise, all that stuff, yada, yada, yada. But I ended up declining their offer, went with Indian River, because it was all within the same time frame that I got hired kind of at both. Yeah. So went with Indian River. It's my hometown. I'm like, man, my family's here. I could be present. I don't have to drive an hour and a half to work. And then they'll work with my medic school. Correct. Ended up getting to medic school. Met Jake. Yeah. The man.
Don't tell him that. Okay. No. Don't tell him that.
Jake, if you're watching this, you suck.
Yeah. Yes. Tell him that. Mumbles. Somebody's got to keep him down, right?
Man, his head. But yeah, so went to medic school, passed the national, and now I guess I am where I am.
So, what is life like as a firefighter from your point of view?
I think it's great. I mean, again, like you see all walks of life. We run even on the station level, you see all walks of life. I have lieutenant. It's a whole nother family, honestly. Kayla's like, why do you stay late at the firehouse? Like, I need you to come home. Like, I'm like, I'm hanging out with the boys. I'm hanging out with the girls. We're
having too much fun.
I spend pretty much the same amount of time with them as I do with you. Like this is a second family for me, especially because family is such an important aspect of my life. The family that I do have. So I'm like, I've incorporated this family, this fire service as family. So it's very important to me. And then as far as like patients go, you always have to be prepared on the drop of a dime. Yeah. So I think, again, it plays into an aspect of my life to where it's like, I like this schedule. I like, I work like you said, 2 days a week.
Rub it in.
Yeah, I work 2 days a week, 3 days a week max.
Let me ask you, because a lot of people will wonder, well, being a lesbian and going into a paramilitary profession, primarily dominated by male figures, right? Tell me about that experience, and tell me about that experience from your perspective.
So I know when I first got hired, I feel like as a female coming in, they always try to put you at like the slower stations. They always try to, I will say, like, they put me at 6 when I first got hired, which is a station on Beachside that runs maybe 1 call every shift.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, like I don't want to, I'm going to be here because I'm new and I'm, whatever. I'm like, I want to be busy. I'm ready for the action. I got, moved around a couple times. I get in a busy house and we run 4 like legitimate structure fires, like not like a little room and contents, but like big time. Like we had a 3-story condo go up on Beachside one day, and we worked our behinds off. But they were like, "Wow, you could work." So then I proved myself. I will say in the beginning, it's a little different. You have to kind of, as a female, you do have to prove yourself a little bit more. Yeah. Like, I'm capable of this job. I know how to do my job. And I was in medic school, so I was working pretty much double time. Yeah, double time, yeah. 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 You went through it, or you saw Jake go through it. Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. It was just, it was a lot, and I did have to prove myself. But once I proved myself, they were like, and I got that reputation, because a reputation will stick with you in the fire service. It will. It definitely will. So I got that reputation, and everyone's like, all right, she can hang, she can hang. So now I'm on the special ops team. I got a bunch of extra classes and got on the team, worked my behind off, and now I am where I am. Yeah. So I'm in the final phase of the apprenticeship program with Indian River County. So I got to meet with the medical director, and then I'll be signed off to be the head medic on the truck. Oh. So. Okay. So now that you've, this podcast is about life, leadership, and culture, right? So your trend, you overcame a lot of stuff to get now to a position in which you are beginning to be a leader, right? You're going to start leading. Correct. The truck, you're going to start leading, and you're looking into teaching and guiding the next generation of firefighters coming up. If I were to ask you, what would be your philosophy, considering your life experiences, what would be your philosophy of leading others, and the experiences that you had when it comes to leading and within a team like you have? I would say, even still, I'm not a lieutenant. I'm not in charge of a truck. We get a probationary firefighter at my station, and if they're not like, hey, what are we training on today? I'm going to go up to them and be like, hey, what are we training on today? Okay. Like, take that initiative. Because they might be nervous. I remember being that person where it's like, I don't want to bother them, So I'll make that decision to where I'm 3 years in this career. I know everybody that I work with. I'm comfortable with everybody that I work with. And I can initiate training. Yeah. Even as a probationary firefighter, when I was brand new, I think I was maybe like 2 months on, I asked my lieutenant a question. I don't even remember what it was. But he was like, I really don't know. So it was a learning experience for not just me, but for my lieutenant as well. But for him as well. Correct. So I think at all walks of life and all stages of this career, you can learn something from anybody. Yeah. So I think as far as leadership goes, I will be in charge of a truck in probably days, if not just 1 or 2 weeks. So I have to hold that accountability. I have to be accountable for myself, for my partner, and for the patient. Yeah. So, and for my crew as a whole and the department as a whole. Yeah. I think it starts with you. You have to hold yourself accountable, and you have to want to be a better person. And not have to wait for like the title to come. Correct. But be able to take that initiative. To take the initiative to actually go from there. 100%. In your career as a firefighter, right? It's easily and evident how you guys affect our culture, right? From the standpoint of taking care of people, from the standpoint of giving your time and your life and put yourselves in life threatening situations. What can you tell me from the standpoint of you as an individual, how you feel that you affect culture
from your point of view?
I would say, I do, obviously, again, we'll go back to like the whole I'm a lesbian thing. So people even just the other day, I showed up to a call. It was just a lift assist. Not like we weren't transporting anywhere to the hospital. We were helping somebody up. And we walked in and I was the first person to introduce myself. I was like, hey, sir, I'm Christina. I'm from River County Fire Rescue. Oh, I expected a couple of gentlemen to show up to pick me up. I'm like, I can promise you, I'm just as strong as some of these gentlemen. Like, you have to, the culture is what you make it. Everybody has an impact on culture, I would say, especially like fire service and just culture as a whole. So make your impact, be that person that takes the initiative, and, show people who you are, what you want. Like our department right now is going through a lot of changes. We are trying to, again, progress to be comparable to Martin, Palm Beach, all the further south departments.
Correct, yeah.
So, that doesn't happen overnight. You got to show up. You got to show up for the commissioners. You got to show up for, union meetings and be present at negotiations. Voice your opinion, right, wrong, or indifferent. Like, speak your truth. So just the impact is what you make it.
Yeah. You mentioned in that interaction with that individual, I was expecting a gentleman. The approach that you took, where does that come from? Because you looked at it from the standpoint, I'm just as capable and I'm just as good, instead of getting, the opposite reaction, which will be, wait, why don't you just accept it from who I am? Why is your approach more subtle and tactful rather than reactive?
Because I feel like it's easier to get your point across that way.
Okay.
Like I could have easily approached it to where it's like, oh, you don't want me here? I'll leave.
Okay. Something Jake will do.
Yeah. Get yourself up, respectfully. But I feel like it wasn't an attack necessarily on my character or who I am as a person. I think a lot of citizens of this county, and honestly, most citizens of America and, even broader, they look at not firefighters, firemen. They expect that. That's who they want fighting. But I'm capable.
Exactly.
I'm more than capable, I would say. I've ran multiple fires. I've ran multiple medical calls. I've ran multiple lift assists. I've done a little bit of everything. And not once, I would say, have I fallen short of my task on hand. Yeah. So I feel like with that, it gives me the confidence to be like, listen, I might not be what you were expecting, but I can still get the job done. Yeah. Let me show you. Yeah. And I picked him, just me, and he was a bigger gentleman, probably 350 pounds. Just me and my engineer picked him up. Yeah. Just two of us. So I'm like, you feel better now? Like I did say something afterwards. I'm like, I said, I told you I got some muscle behind me, you know? So I think it's not a lot of the times what you say. I think it's how you say it.
How you say it.
Correct.
Yeah. And I do appreciate the fact that that you are aware of how people react. I mean, you mentioned that in the conversation quite a few times. I'm aware that what people react is really, truly not a reflection of who I am, right? It's perhaps they just haven't experienced it,
100%.
Who I am. And as a person, my minority person, I could relate to that aspect of like, wait a minute, but it's a beautiful perspective because a lot of people have become bitter because they're not accepting me as I am.
Yeah. And I could have taken the route where I became bitter. It probably would have been the easier route. But at the same time, again, like you just said, a lot of people just haven't experienced it. Yes. And even people that have been like rude to me or, degrading, I still have most of the time been able to get them to come around within our interactions. And they're like, wow, you might not be so bad after all.
Exactly.
Surprise.
Surprise. So we talked a lot about the things that you have overcome, the things that your family dynamic, but it's one thing that I want to talk about as we begin to kind of like arrive towards the conclusion is the loss of your grandfather in February. Let's talk about that. Tell me about that experience and how are you feeling about that?
So he did, unfortunately, leave us on, it was February 21st of this year. He had been quite sick for the last 2 years. My grandfather is a very, like, he was, like I mentioned earlier, he was a military man, very scheduled, very, like, you know, he had an agenda and he was going to accomplish it, which is, again, part of the reason that I feel like I am the way that I am. I learned those dynamics. I watched him as I grew up, and I developed those mentalities. So up until the last 2 years ago, that's always how he was. Then I remember this very apparently, you know, he was supposed to I was going to get my tires changed at like a local tire shop. And I asked him, I said, hey, it's going to take them a couple hours. You want to come pick me up and we can go to lunch? So, and again, he's very scheduled. I didn't have to remind him. Yeah. I've never had to remind him. I'm like, all right, be there at, say, like 11 o'clock, you know? And he didn't show up. And I was like, I ended up calling him. I said, hey, where are you? He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh. So he's like, oh, I totally forgot. And I'm like, all right, something's wrong. So he starts seeing all these, and I made that present to him, or like apparent to him. And he was like, you know, you might be right. Like, I've never had an issue like that before. So he got diagnosed with, over the course of the last 2 years, he had always been battling with like heart failure and like diabetes and stuff like that. So they were balancing all his medications. But then he got diagnosed with MDS, which is a blood disorder where your body produces blood, but it's not the correct like formation, so it doesn't absorb well with the body. You don't absorb the hemoglobin and stuff like that carries oxygen throughout your body. Okay. So it's almost like a form of leukemia. So he had been battling that for 2 years. They had him on medications for it. He also got diagnosed with NASH, which is non-alcoholic cirrhosis of the liver.
Of the liver?
Correct. Okay. So he got diagnosed with that. So they were balancing like all sorts of almost lethal medications. Yeah. And he had been sick. We almost put him in hospice. Like, I think it was February of the year before. And then he's a very religious man. So he was praying. He had his pastor come. We were all like, you know, doing the whole prayer thing. And, you know, he came through, you know. So he ended up turning around. He got better for like, I would say 5 or 6 months. And then he started declining again. Oh, okay. So he was in and out of the hospital for, I would say 6 months before he passed. Oh, wow. He spent probably more time in the hospital or at like inpatient doctor's appointments or even outpatient doctor's appointments. So he was just very sick. And then he went into the hospital in the beginning of February for shortness of breath. And it's because of the MDS. His blood wasn't getting that hemoglobin and stuff like that.
Getting him enough oxygen.
Correct. So he was short of breath. They ended up putting him on, because he has a history of heart failure, they ended up putting him on Lasix. He then developed kidney failure because Lasix is like terrible for your kidneys. So put him on Lasix, it ended up killing his kidneys. Then he started going through like multi-organ failure because his heart was failing, his kidneys were failing, his liver was failing. And he was in the hospital for 12 days. And then the doctor finally came in and was like, hey, let's talk about this. So he was on a CPAP at the time because there was fluid built up in his lungs. And we withdrew him from the Lasix because it was killing the kidneys. Yeah. So we withdrew him from Lasix. He was like, listen, we have a couple options. Walked us through like the whole hospice idea, taking him home and just letting him go that way. But he was like, this is probably the end of his road. Oh, wow. So it was pretty hard, especially the role that my grandfather played in my life, both my grandparents and my mom, you know. So I think that was devastating. And we ended up choosing the hospice route against, I'm not going to say against his will, but he was like, I don't want to be on medication. He's like, I'm ready to go home.
He was ready to go.
And he's not talking about like home as in Sebastian, Florida. He's talking about home, you know? Yeah. So as soon as he said that, I'm like, we need to do it. Cause like initially I was like, no, like I was fighting it. I was like tooth and nail. No, I'm not ready for this. But that was selfish of me. So he was like, he looks at me, he goes, I'm ready to go home. And I was like, all right. Got all teared up and I was like, all right. Gave him a hug, spent the last couple hours with him. I ended up having to work that night. He ended up the doctor came in to talk to us. And then the next day he was like, all right, we're going to get him in hospice tomorrow. He ended up going to hospice at, I think it was like 1:00 in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. I went to see him before work. And then I worked from 4 to like 9 because I had a second job at the time. Worked and then went to see him afterwards. And afterward, it was only my mom there. And then it was just me and my mom. So I'm sitting there with her. I'm like, you want me to stay or you want me to get out of here? She was like, it's totally up to you. Like, go. I'm still in my work uniform. She's like, you can go home, shower, and come back. I go home, shower. I'm on my way back, and she called me. She's like, he's gone. And I'm like, oh. I'm like bawling my eyes out.
Yeah.
It was definitely a very, very hard thing. And again, Jake knows a lot of this because I was going through this when I was in medical school as well, where his health was just declining rapidly, and we thought he was going to go again like a year and a half prior to what he went.
Yeah. But
he ended up coming around, and then I think he's in a better place. I think he knows where he was going, and I think he was content with that decision.
Yeah.
And I think he leaves a lot of people that love him, but I think he is beyond content.
Let me ask you, because I know this is like a personal and it's very sensitive, right? You see death in your profession on a regular basis. You know, I know that you guys do. That's why I love kind of like hanging out and having fun with you guys, you know, to let
story
loose,
times,
right? Paris, remember that?
Yeah.
When death comes that close to home, what's the difference?
So actually, funny enough,
because that's closer to home than when you're working.
Initially, it didn't. I wouldn't say it didn't affect me initially, but I was like, I see death all the time. Like, I'm used to this.
Yeah. And
then as the days go on, I'm like, and it took us a while to do his funeral because he has family from all over the world. We had to fly people in from New York and Ohio and all sorts of different places. So we ended up waiting about a month for his like memorial service.
Yeah.
And throughout that month, I think a lot of life-altering events changed because of the circumstances with him.
Such as? Oh, hey, you know, you put it out there, you know. It's so whatever you feel comfortable sharing. No. Whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
So I was in a different relationship at the time, and I was just like, I can't do this. Like, I can't do this anymore. And I don't think it was solely because of that. I think there was a lot of other things that played into that.
Okay.
And I think I just, again, gained a different perspective on life. Because life doesn't last forever, and you need to do the things that make you happy. Yeah. And you need to be present in today and build and grow to be the person that you want to be tomorrow. So I think it did change my perspective a lot throughout that course of the month. And obviously I went through the whole grieving process a little bit differently, I would say, than most people do because of my profession, because I'm so familiar with death. Yeah. So I think it was definitely an adjustment. And even still, I go to my grandma's house, and I'm like, where's Papa? It's hard. Yeah. It is. And, you know, you see these people that you love and you admire and you look up to, and you have to realize, like, they're not going to be here forever. So you have to take each day with that drive. You know, you have to be the person that you want to be. You have to no regrets. Yeah. No regrets.
No regrets.
Yes. And you have to spend time with people that mean something to you.
Yes.
You have to be with the person that means something to you. And you have to live every day to its fullest.
So consequently, right, what decisions did you make after realizing this? You know, you mentioned that you were in a relationship. You said, this is not good for me. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that segue. You know, because from death comes life, right? Correct. And changes in perspective, right? And realizing truly what's important for us, right?
100%.
So tell me about that.
So, you know,
I'm so mean to you.
You set me up, right? It's okay. It's okay. It's something I'm happy to talk about.
Yes. I'm happy about it. You know how I feel about it. It's like, you know, but go ahead.
So obviously, you know my situation, but I was dating this woman named Kat, and at the time that my grandfather passed. So I realized, I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
This is not what's meant for me. This is not what's making my heart skip beats. This is not it.
It's not the one.
It's not the one.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew exactly in the back of my mind who was the one.
Yeah.
And so, funny enough, she was actually the one. Kayla reached out to me around the time saying, hey, I heard about your grandfather. I'm sorry. Like, if you need anything, just let me know. Mm-hmm. And we had dated in the past for maybe a year, roughly. Then it didn't work out. Then I ended up getting with Kat. Mm-hmm. So when my grandfather passed and Kayla reached out, I was like, everything's clicking.
Yeah,
like, the math is mathin'.
Yeah.
So her and I ended up having a couple conversations where it's like, let's try this again. Mm-hmm. You know, like, and she had seen somebody else while we weren't together. I had seen somebody else that we were together while we weren't together. And we both were like, all right, we're not happy, separated. So let's try this again. Let's try it again. So now here we are. We're back together. We're living life to the fullest. And I would say it's probably one of the blessings in disguise that happened from the passing of my grandfather.
The passing of your grandfather.
Correct.
Right. So, I mean, again, I'm always intrigued about people's lives, right? Because it's easy. Like we've gone to parties and we have a good time, and we've gone on trips and we have a good time. But it's also knowing you guys and knowing the individuals. I see the beauty of the whole entire story and the challenges that people really don't get to see on a regular basis. So if you had to summarize some of your biggest lessons in life from your relationship with your father and your family, the beautiful thing with your grandma and your grandfather and your mother, through the obstacles of accidents and things that the way the cookie crumbled, to use your words, what are some of the biggest takeaways up to this point in your life that you could share, or that really say, oh, here, these are my little nuggets? What would they be?
Man, I would say, and I think I've been, this is just like a reiteration of what I've kind of been saying throughout this whole talk with you. Man, don't take life for granted. Live every day to the best of your ability. No regrets.
No regrets.
Don't be afraid to do something that you're wanting to do, but you're nervous about. Yeah. Be the person that you want to be. Take that initiative. Take that drive. And grind, dude.
Right, yeah.
Like, nothing in this life is free or easy. And there's a quote, let me see if I can get it off the top of my head. It's like, the things in life that are easy aren't worth it, and the things that are things that are in life that are worth it are not easy.
Are not easy, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think it's all about initiative. I think it's about the drive, and I think, everybody has a different perspective. Everybody has a different opinion. And this America, especially now, is diverse. And there's a lot of different types of people from all different types of walks of life, So don't be afraid to make different connections. Don't be afraid to make different friendships or try that thing that you've been nervous about for so long. Just don't be afraid.
Thank you for tuning into this episode. If you're ready for meaningful personal growth and transforming your organization and business, visit our website at asqempowermentservices.com for more information. Stay tuned for more exciting topics.